Today, skating on thin ice. Hello again, I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to our latest post covering finance and property news. Today, I want to discuss a couple of recent posts from Moody's, which highlighted to me the stresses in the financial system, and how in some cases regulators seem to be walking back their focus on risk mitigation. The data relates to issues in the US and the UK, but it's the direction of travel which concerns me. So we look at household debt in the UK and looser regulation in the USA. And by the way, if you get value from our posts, please do consider supporting our work either via Patreon, here's a link, or by making a one-off donation via PayPal. Again, here is the link. We really appreciate the support we receive to help us to continue to make great content. Now, according to Moody's, on the 7th of January, the UK trade unions published their annual report, which warned about a credit crisis as UK average non-mortgage household debt jumped above £15,000, almost 50% higher than before the 2008 financial crisis. The increase in household debt leaves borrowers vulnerable to sudden economic stress, such as that which might crystallise in a no-deal Brexit scenario. An incremental increase in unemployment would have negative consequences for highly leveraged consumers. Higher joblessness, reduced real wages, and to a lesser extent lower refinancing availability would increase delinquencies and defaults in consumer loan pools, including those backing residential mortgage-backed securities and asset-backed securities. Additionally, softening house prices can exacerbate the negative effect of rising defaults on RMBS. In case of a severe economic stress, the macroeconomic outlook for the UK would weaken, leading to a decline in household prices nationwide, which would have a mixed effect regionally across the UK. They expect more negative consequence in regions with higher unemployment and in industries that are more materially affected by such a stress scenario. However, they expect that any deterioration in house prices will be less severe than during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, given less inflationary stresses within the market. The performance of buy-to-let or investment properties and non-conforming transactions would weaken, especially for some recently originated collateral pools that have assets with relatively weak underwriting standards. The performance of credit card asset-backed security collateral would also deteriorate, especially for those pools with more exposure to highly leveraged obligors. Moody's forecasts are negative for all UK consumer sector collateral, and their collateral performance forecasts over the next 12 to 18 months address the direction of expected losses for the market in general, not specific collateral pools. In normal circumstances, the absolute level of household debt is not necessarily as important as affordability measures, such as the ratio of payment or loan to disposable income. But given the low interest rate environment, affordability is still relatively high for UK borrowers. However, sudden economic stress that leads to negative real wage growth and increasing unemployment has the potential to change matters. The average household debt figure in the trade union's analysis is based on data from the Bank of England, Office of National Statistics, and the Student Loan Company. It excludes mortgages, but includes everything else, including credit cards, personal loans, payday loans, and student loans, which means it deviates from the Bank of England's definition of non-mortgaged household debt. The rapid growth of non-mortgaged, mainly unsecured debt has contributed to household debt since 2013 after years of constrained credit in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. And the growth pattern of mortgage and non-mortgage debt have switched gears compared with pre-crisis patterns. Non-mortgage debt, for example credit cards and consumer loans, have had a high single-digit growth rate since 2015, with slightly slower growth in 2018 to a level of 6%, whereas pre-crisis mortgage debt had these high growth rates. The The 2018 data shows that UK households had average non-mortgage debt of approximately £10,000, even excluding student loans, and this is in line with levels reported in 2008. But now, let's go across to the US, where on the 9th of January, Moody's says the Federal Reserve proposed revisions to company-run stress testing requirements for Fed-regulated US banks to conform with the Economic Growth, Regulatory Relief and Consumer Protection Act, or the EGRRCPA, which became law in May 2018. Among the revisions, which are similar to those proposed in December 2018 by the Office of the Controller of the Currency, the OCC, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp, the FDIC, is a proposal that would eliminate the requirement for company-run stress tests at most bank subsidiaries with total consolidated assets of less than $250 billion. The proposed changes would be credit negative for affected US banks because they would ease the minimum requirements for stress testing at the subsidiary level. And the proposed revisions would also require company-run stress tests once every other year instead of annually at most banks with more than $250 billion in total assets that are not subsidiaries of systemically important bank holding companies. Additionally, the proposal would eliminate the hypothetical adverse scenario from all company-run stress tests and from the Fed's own supervisory stress tests, commonly known as the Dodd-Frank stress test, the DFAST, and the Comprehensive Analysis and Review, the CCAR. The baseline and severely adverse scenarios would remain. The proposed changes aim to implement the EGRRCPA. As such, they expect that they will be adopted with minimal revisions. In late December 2018, the FDIC and the OCC published similar proposals governing the banks they regulate. The stress testing requirements imposed on US banks over the past decade have indeed helped improve US banks' risk management practices and have led banks to incorporate risk management considerations more fully into both their strategic planning and daily decision making. Without periodic stress tests, these US banks may have more flexibility to reduce their capital cushions, making them more vulnerable in an economic downturn. And on the 31st of October 2018, the Fed announced a similar proposal for the company-run stress tests conducted by bank holding companies as part of a broader proposal to tailor its enhanced supervisory framework for large bank holding companies. Positively, the Fed's 31 October proposal would still subject banks holding companies with total assets of between $100 and $250 billion to supervisory stress testing at least every 2 years, and would still require them to submit annual capital plans to the Fed, even though the latest proposal would no longer require their bank subsidiaries to conduct their own company-run stress tests. Also, supervisory stress testing for larger holding companies would continue to be conducted annually. Continued supervisory stress testing should limit any potential reduction in capital cushions at these bank holding companies. Now, Moody's believes that some mid-sized banks will continue to use company-run stress testing in some form, but more tailored to their own needs and assumptions. Nevertheless, this may not be the view of all banks, particularly those for which stress testing has not been integrated into their risk management frameworks. Additionally, smaller banks may have resource constraints, and the reduced frequency of mandated company-run stress testing for bank subsidiaries with assets above $250 billion that are not subsidiaries of systemically important bank holding companies is also credit negative, although not to the same extent as the elimination of the requirement for the mid-sized banks. The longer time between bank management's reviews of stress test results introduces a higher probability of changing economic conditions that could leave a firm with an insufficient capital cushion. The Fed's proposal also would eliminate the hypothetical adverse scenario from company-run stress tests and the Fed's supervisory stress tests. Now, the market is focused on the severely adverse scenario, which is harsher than the adverse scenario, so this proposed change is unlikely to have significant consequences. But from those two stories, we observed two further indicators of stress in the financial system. First, higher consumer debt from the UK. And second, a continued weakening of regulation in the USA. Both of these are frankly concerning trends. Before I go, a quick reminder. The next DFA live stream is scheduled for 8 p.m. Sydney time on Tuesday the 15th of January. Here's a link to the show. You can join the live chat on the night or send me questions beforehand. And as always, if you like what you've seen here today, please share and like the post and add a comment or question. I read them all. And if you want to join the growing band of subscribers who receive alerts when we release new posts, do subscribe now by hitting the subscribe bell. And if you have already subscribed, many thanks. I really appreciate your support and participation. I'm Martin North, the Principal Analyst at Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.